So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read in Yeshayahu the prophet, it was then explained quite a few years ago regarding then the understanding of this great prophet related then with the merchants of the earth. Very importantly, there is a section in Yeshayahu where we find then, most importantly, on a word then spoken on the 23rd chapter of this great prophet. There is a section of it related with the Creator himself, or then the great mighty works of his holy hands, restoring then the merchantships of his people. So then let's understand what's going on as far as Daniel the 11th chapter. What's going on in the world? What are the nations then doing? What kind of systems are coming up? Very simply then, Daniel the 11th chapter gives us a very important understanding regarding this topic, because the Creator himself, he is the very person involved with the many sections of these world systems, and he determines by the word of his holy prophets, and then the world must line up with it. We understand the 1,000 years of deceit is gone, and the city of the Messiah and the cities of the Messiah is obviously they are also returning, because the prophecies are very clear as far as the 61st chapter and chapter 1:8 of Yeshayahu the prophet. So then, how this new system then is going to start taking place? Well, we verified then what's going on with news around the world. The most powerful country in China, obviously there is a section related with the new system via online, and it was said that many years ago as far as the computerized systems and the capability of these machines. China has a great plan as far as every computer in the planet and every user linking up their computers with the Chinese bank. Very wise, because they get most for their money, they get inexpensive products, and they can start up their own distribution centers. Not only this, obviously when you understand, read Daniel the 11th chapter in Hebrew and a few sections in Aramaic, try to remind yourself that these scriptures, they were recorded in Hebrew or Aramaic, no other language. So then when you understand the culture of the period and you understand the Eastern culture, then you can understand the prophecies of Yeshayahu, and then afterwards you may interpret them. Now, the interpretation must be done as then the Eastern culture, based from the antiquities, and then the time that these prophecies were then recorded, and understand the multi-layered principles of these prophecies. For instance, you find sections of Daniel that were related centuries ago. You find sections of Daniel that are for the future. And each of these are linked up with Leviticus or Vayikra, the 23rd chapter. Why do we then say that these scriptures must be interpreted as per the culture of the time? Very simple. There are sections of Daniel where you find, and there shall come a despised one. Now try to understand these. Very importantly, you find this in the 21st verse of the 11th chapter. Now I have to ask yourself, is Daniel then relating this specific prophecy of tabernacling or regarding the layer of trade? Try to understand, Daniel He was a symbol of the presence of the Almighty, and he was also granted with the understanding of the local trade of the king. Now, it's up to you when you read these understandings and you try to understand then the culture of the East, and then you make a reference of then either tabernacling or then the trade meaning of these holy prophecy. So then, what's going on as far as the prophecies themselves? What can we then do to understand the nations then joining up via computer? Does Daniel say that there is computer? Well, that's up to you to make the research. Try to understand, the prophecies could not be literal as far as the situation and circumstances of the future, because computer was not longer available as far as we can understand. Now, as far as the computers themselves, we understand that the principle they were built upon, Daniel was familiar with the functionality of a fast system. Now, if you want to relate your understanding with it, it's up to you to make the decision. However, the Eastern culture gives us a few clues as far as how can we understand these holy prophecy and then relate ourselves with our personal lives, understanding the tabernacling and understanding also the system of the end, because then later there is a portion of the 12th chapter of Daniel that is heavily linked with the Apocalypse or Revelation and linked up with then the great prophet Enoch. So then these layers, when we understand then where they come from, for instance Vayikra, the 23rd chapter, combining then the times and the seasons and these specific prophecies in their proper times. Now the seasons, as we understand, that is the spring and autumn. Pesach is very near, and then afterwards we start then our quest, understandably, in Yeshayahu and sections also in Zephaniah, because this transitional time that we moved from the 1,000 years of deceit and we are then heading towards the holy cities of the Mashiach being restored, then there is also a section in the very near future where then there is another truly very big transition. How do we understand this? Simply by reading Daniel the prophet. We understand that China is placing more equipment in space. We understand then every place then the president of China or the leader of China, he visits other countries, he's very concerned with their infrastructure. Ask yourselves, why? So then you start then building up your library of information as far as the trade. What's going on in the world? Truly the governments are going to be governors, or they are going to be given over to the freighters of this earth? Read then the sections of the Apocalypse, chapter 8. And then Enoch, extremely important, because Enoch had also understandings of the Apocalypse. If you take the time to read it, you understand there is a link with it. So then for those people who are understanding only because the Bible is complete as it is, of course it is, but as it is, there were principles prior of this recording of the Greco people. So what Bible is speaking of that should not be tampered with is then the translation done by the Greco people or the original translations done via the Hebrews. It depends how your understanding then can focus and evaluate precisely then what you want to learn. So next time I'm going to evaluate principle by principle of Daniel the 11th chapter on enlightenment of then the trade factor and the first transition. We are during the time of the first transition, and then later on there is a second transition, and then very late then there is a third and final transition. So when they study each of these in the enlightenment of what the prophets said, without any kind of giving more understanding or then not giving enough understanding. We only give and interpret what the prophets already had given and interpreted. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.